This would be a really funky trade for the Red Sox to take a look at. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and this is a name that I've surprisingly seen a lot of people start to connect to the Boston Red Sox. I've seen it in some articles written about the Sox. Robbie Hyde's new Red Sox channel, Fenway Faithful, he mentioned it on there. We've seen it a couple of times in our comment section, so I think it's time for us to break this down. So what we're going to do in today's videos, we're going to take a look at the pros and cons of the Red Sox trading for Nolan Arenado to ultimately try and figure out if this is something we want the Red Sox to look at. Thank you all very much for taking a second and clicking on this one. Let's get into it. So like I said, the idea of trading for Nolan Arenado is a bit of a funky one because he's not an absolutely perfect fit with this roster, but there are absolutely reasons why the Red Sox would love to have Nolan Arenado on this team. For starters, he does something very important that the Red Sox have publicly wanted to do since this season ended, and that is help balance out this lineup, especially with bringing power from the right-hand side. Now, this season was a bit of a down year for Nolan Arenado. He hit just .272 with a .325 on base percentage and a .394 slug for a .719 OPS and a .101 OPS plus. Basically, he was a league average hitter. Technically, he was 1% above. He also had 16 homers and 23 doubles with 71 RBIs in 2024. But we all know what Arenado is capable of from the right-hand side of the plate. There's a reason he is an 8-time All-Star, and it has everything to do, or a lot to do, with the fact that when he's on, he can absolutely mash. Through 12 seasons in Major League Baseball, with a total .285 average, .342 on base percentage, and a .515 slug for a .120 OPS plus, about 20% above league average production during that 12-year span. He is averaging 28 home runs a year and 94 RBIs throughout his career. That is a ton of right-handed power production. Now, there's absolutely an argument to be made that we're seeing the decline of Nolan Arenado at the plate, and we will definitely get into that in the later part of this video, but I do want to point out a couple of reasons why specifically Arenado's bat makes a lot of sense for the Boston Red Sox. The first thing I want to point out is that this year, and really in general, Nolan has been a pretty pull-happy hitter. From the right-hand side of the plate, that's a pretty good sign that he is going to absolutely mash at Fenway Park. Now, if you take that same spray chart and you overlay it on Fenway Park, look at how many hits he would have near or on or over the Green Monster. It quite literally looks like he would absolutely blow a hole in that poor Green Monster. And that, to me, could indicate that, hey, yes, while he is declining in St. Louis, he may be able to get those numbers up in a big way if he played 81 games at Fenway. The other thing I wanted to point out about Nolan Arenado's 2024 season is his strikeout rate. Nolan Arenado is one of the hardest players to strike out in Major League Baseball. He doesn't take a ton of walks, but he makes a ton of contact. And for the Red Sox, that's kind of absolutely perfect, right? They had a really big problem with strikeouts this season. A guy coming in here, a proven veteran coming in here who has that sort of ability that Nolan Arenado does, not only adds something to your lineup that you simply don't have right now, but it also really helps younger players have a role model, have someone to lean on who's in the game day in and day out, who understands how to make great contact. Plus, Tyler O'Neill was probably your best right-handed hitter this season, despite the fact that Tyler O'Neill had basically double the amount of home runs that Nolan Arenado had. Nolan Arenado still had more RBIs. The reason for that is because simply you put the ball in play, good things tend to happen. I think that could be a really big factor as to why he could make sense on the Boston Red Sox. And not only talking offensively here, the fit for the defense would absolutely make sense as well, because Nolan Arenado is a legendary third base defender. At third base, for his first 10 seasons in this league, he won a Gold Glove every single year. He has a career 162 defensive run saves at third, and even at 33, he's still top of the league with 9 outs above average and in the 94th percentile in all of defensive capabilities. He was one of, if not the best defender at third base in baseball this year. He's one of the game's best third base defenders in the history of the sport. This would be a dude who could absolutely come in here and totally change the landscape of the Red Sox infield defense, which again is another thing the Red Sox have pointed out as something they are looking to improve upon coming into 2025. Why not make the Red Sox one of the better infield defenses in the sport? I don't think anyone would really have a problem with Nolan Arenado's defense over there at third base. So looking at it bit-wise in terms of the player himself, yeah, there is actually a pretty decent fit here with the Boston Red Sox. Now, I do want to talk about the idea of him being traded. I do think there is some realistic scenario where the St. Louis Cardinals put him on the trading block. Coming into this offseason, the Cardinals have already been pretty public about the idea of wanting to cut payroll. They want to get their payroll down, with Nolan Arenado having one of, if not the biggest contracts on the St. Louis Cardinals. It makes sense that he is a name that comes up when you're talking about cutting payroll. And that also could lend a hand to the Boston Red Sox, because that most likely means you're not going to have to overwhelm them with a trade package to get this conversation started. I would assume that the Cardinals would be pretty open to the idea of moving him if the price is right. And that's what I want to talk about next, is the actual price to get Nolan Arenado. In Robbie Hyde's video, he mentioned something really interesting. He mentioned the idea of trading Masataka Yoshida for Nolan Arenado. Now, I am going to say that I have seen this a couple of times in our own personal comment section by some of you guys, so I also want to give you guys your credit where credit is due, and I actually don't think this is a terrible idea. This could actually work out for both sides. Now, it wouldn't just be Masataka Yoshida. You would have to give them something else in return. I put together a little package here of Masataka Yoshida, Blaze Jordan, and Grant Gambrell, just so the Cardinals are getting something in return that it makes sense for their possible rebuild. They get Masa, who is a left-handed contact hitter, a guy who could play some outfield for them, a guy who could play some DH for them, who saves them money while still giving you production. They get Blaze Jordan to help with build up that pipeline for a third baseman. Plus, as much as I love Blaze Jordan for the Red Sox, he's pretty blocked in right now. Acquiring Nolan Arenado would even block him in even further. So I think that kind of makes sense for the Red Sox to move on. Grant Gambrell just sort of sweetens this deal a little bit. And I'm wondering if this is something the Red Sox and the Cardinals would be interested in. For the Red Sox, obviously trading Masa allows you to balance out this lineup and create more of a versatile DH position. For the Cardinals, you still get a legitimate, very solid big league player while also improving your pipeline and shedding salary. It could make sense for both sides. So taking a look overall at what this could mean in terms of positives for the Red Sox, I do think there are some legitimate ones. I think Robbie Hyde, you guys' articles aren't totally wrong in the idea that Nolan Arenado makes sense for the Red Sox and could quite possibly be a realistic option this offseason. But I also think there could be some downsides to this as well that could prevent the Red Sox from going in this direction. But before we talk about those, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps these videos out a ton, and it's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Thank you all very much for taking a second and doing so. I apologize for the interruption. Let's get into some of the drawbacks. I think the biggest and possibly the most outstanding reason for the Red Sox to try and avoid trading for Nolan Arenado has everything to do with his age. He's coming off of his age 33 season. He's going into his age 34 season. He's under contract until his age 36 season is up. So you would get 3 years of Nolan Arenado. But again, you go back to the trends that we talked about when we were talking about the positives on the offensive side of things. While the last 2 seasons for Nolan have been pretty productive, they've also been considerably less productive than he was in the prime of his career. Is that something the Red Sox are willing to take a chance on improves while he continues to get older, or is that too big of a risk for the Red Sox to go to? Is that something that playing 81 games at Fenway Park would help, or is this something that just simply comes with age on the back half of Nolan's career? Is he going to be this sort of league average bat with a whole lot of contact for the Red Sox, or is there still that potential that he is a legitimate all-star impact type guy? That's a pretty big risk for the Red Sox to take, and it gets even bigger when you consider sort of, in my opinion, the other big hitch in this conversation, which is the money attached. Technically speaking, Nolan's not getting paid a ton, but towards the luxury tax, it's about $25.5 million. It's technically $25,555,555, but that's a big mouthful, so we're just going to say $25.5 million. If the Red Sox were able to place Masataka Yoshida in this deal, they are technically only taking on about $7 million in salary. You trade away $18 million, you bring back $25 million. Well, you only added $8 million to your overall team salary, which could hypothetically be something the Red Sox would be interested in. But again, you go back to the declining statistics, you go back to the age factor, and $25 million a year is a pretty significant sum to pay for someone going towards their age 40 season. Is that something the Red Sox are willing to do? I think that's sort of the biggest hitch in this idea. There are a couple of other little ones I think we should mention that could end up being a bit of a wrench in this plan. In my opinion, another one is the idea of moving Rafael Devers off of third base and into that DH spot. Now, hypothetically here, if they were to add Masataka Yoshida into this deal, then I don't think it's really that big of a problem. The Red Sox mentioned in their postseason presser basically that they want to try and alleviate some of the injury risk that comes with Rafael Devers. They want to figure out a way for him to end up staying healthier during a season. Well, a big way to do that would be to keep him off the field, right? That's how he continues to keep injuring himself, and that's a big reason why he ended up struggling in the later half of the 2024 season. If he's not playing the field, well, his injury risk goes down a bit. You're obviously not paying him for his defense. You're not really losing a ton of value taking him off of the DH spot, so this really wouldn't be a problem. The only time, in my opinion, where this really does become an issue is if the Red Sox do trade for Nolan Arenado, but they can't figure out a way to include Masataka Yoshida in this deal, because then you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, how the hell are you supposed to fit Arenado, Devers, and Masataka Yoshida into the same lineup day in and day out? I just don't think it's physically possible. Right on the surface, it's not a huge deal, but if they can't get Masa done, then I think it becomes a pretty big issue. Plus, you also got to talk about whether or not Rafi wants to move off third base. You got to talk about what that would do to him mentally, just being a hitter. Is that going to make him better? Is that going to make it worse? It's definitely a big conversation in part of this deal, but it would make the DH position a bit more versatile because you can play Rafael Devers on the field when you need him to. You can move Nolan Arenado into that DH spot. You give him a day off. You could put someone else in that DH spot, right? You can utilize that DH spot in more ways than you can right now with Masataka Yoshida. And the final thing I think that could be standing in the way of getting this deal done is Nolan Arenado himself. He has a full no-trade clause, meaning that even if the Cardinals and the Red Sox say, man, this would work out great for both sides, I love this deal, this is going to be perfect, let's get this deal done, they still have to bring it to Nolan Arenado, who essentially could veto the whole thing. You could say, no, you know what, I'm good. I like staying in St. Louis. I like the fans. I like the city. I like what I'm getting paid here. I don't really want to move. Thanks, but no thanks. And all of a sudden, that deal is completely done. That deal is kaput. That's kind of a really big factor into whether or not the Red Sox can actually do this. So it would end up all deciding on whether or not Nolan Arenado wants to come to the Red Sox. And honestly, I don't know if he's going to want to or not. So I think there are a couple of big things here that could be standing in the way of the Red Sox looking to acquire him. Taking a look at this overall, the more I researched it, the more I wrote a script for it, the more I'm talking about it in this video, the more I really like this idea. I do think, despite the fact that Nolan's been declining in production, him being at Fenway, him with the contact ability that he has, would really increase that production pretty immediately. I think he'd be a really big force in the Red Sox lineup, and I think he could do a lot of good for this Red Sox team. I just personally think it would have to take a perfect storm, vacuum type deal for the Red Sox to get this done. The Cardinals would have to want Masataka Yoshida. The Red Sox would have to want to take on that salary. And while that could possibly happen, I think the fact that it would take a perfect storm makes this idea pretty unlikely. So despite what I think about it, I don't know if the Red Sox would be interested in something like this. And honestly, I don't know if the Cardinals would either. But that's just my opinion. I laid out the pros, I laid out the cons. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think? If you were the Red Sox, would you, or the Cardinals, would you want to deal Nolan Arenado? And what would it take for you to get him over to the Boston Red Sox? Let me know all your thoughts on the idea of trading for Nolan Arenado in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton. It's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget, if you want to listen instead of watch these episodes, all you got to do is head over to your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for taking a second and clicking on this one, and I will see you in the Red Seats.